to accomplish a goal. Now, if your answer is yes, you have an idea of what it's like to be in the perfect storm. Your decisions may not mean the difference between life and death, but they can make the difference between being a leader in innovation and finding new ways to acquire and transfer land rights that are needed to build and maintain energy and transportation infrastructure. Or failing to find, hire, and train the right people, not being able to acquire the land rights you need in a timely manner, and losing your clients to the competition or bankruptcy. Now, who's read the book or seen the movie The Perfect Storm? Tell you something that always amazes me is about 75% of the people I meet are familiar with The Perfect Storm, and the question I'm asked often is, how did it get that name? Because the words perfect and storm don't go together. It's another oxymoron, like easement valuation. At the time, it wasn't called The Perfect Storm. And it wasn't even a storm in the traditional sense of the word. It was the combination of three independent weather systems. A low-pressure system stalled out over Sable Island, Nova Scotia. An extreme higher pressure system was repelled southeast from Canada on the jet stream. And the extreme low pressure Hurricane Grace came up from the Caribbean. All three arrived in the same place at the same time. The resulting storm was 5 times the size of Hurricane Andrew. And for the first time in living memory, the storm moved in retrograde motion to the west instead of the east. According to meteorologists, it's the worst weather in more than 100 years. The National Weather Service didn't give the storm a name, but it was so big, most people thought it deserved a name. Some of the newspapers and magazines called it the no-name storm. Others called it the Halloween storm because it happened around Halloween and described it in terms of your worst nightmare. When Sebastian Younger was conducting research for the book, he talked to Bob Case, a meteorologist with the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, because he wanted to know, how do you measure a storm? The typical yardstick is graduated in degrees of bad. How many people died? How many billions of dollars worth of damage? Bob Case said this storm was so bad it could not possibly have been any worse. It was the perfect storm. At the time, I was the commanding officer of the Coast Guard cutters IRWA, homeported in Newcastle, New Hampshire. Most of the time, we conducted fisheries patrols on Georgia's bank. We boarded fishing vessels to ensure compliance with the safety laws because commercial fishing is the most hazardous industry in the United States. There are more deaths per capita than any other industry. We also check for compliance with the fishing laws. We make sure they're not catching fish that are too small or out of season or a location where they shouldn't. And we're always available for search and rescue. We responded to many calls for help from fishing vessels that were on fire or sinking or had fishermen who were severely injured and they needed to be medevac to a hospital. During the middle of our patrols, we get what's appropriately named a mid-patrol break. We go back into port for 3 days, take on some fuel, food, catch up on some sleep. I always like to remind my 3 children they still have a father. And of course, I'll take my wife, Carol, out for lunch. She said it was in my job description. Now, before I go back on the patrols, I always read the weather reports. The National Weather Service is calling for 100-mile-an-hour winds and 60-foot seas. Perhaps the blue skies and gentle breeze on shore force some sailboats to not take the warning seriously. Now, maybe they would have if the National Weather Service had mentioned the book or the fact that the movie was going to star George Clooney. Now, I knew the weather was going to be so bad that the fishermen weren't going to be able to catch any fish, and it most likely damaged their fishing gear. And being good business people, they know you don't remain in business by generating expenses and not creating revenue. So whether they cared about safety or economics, I knew they'd head back in. But I can't remain in port because my mid-patrol break is over. It doesn't make any sense to go out to George's Bank. I decide to anchor behind Cape Cod to seek shelter from the storm. I call my wife to tell her about the plan. She calls the wives of all my crew members so they won't be worried about their husbands out in this terrible weather. And it is a great plan for almost 2 hours. Have you ever had one of those plans? At midnight, we received a call for help. But it's not from a commercial fishing boat. It's from a 32-foot sailboat. The Satori had departed Portsmouth, New Hampshire with 3 people on board. They were headed to Bermuda when they're caught in a storm 100 miles southwest of Nantucket. During the night they broach, that means they roll 90 degrees. Their rigging is damaged. Their life raft is washed overboard. They're drenched with the cold ocean water, and they don't have any exposure suits to protect them from the cold. Hypothermia can kill you because the water is 25 times more efficient at removing body heat than air. Coast Guard Rescue Coordination Center in Boston directs us to proceed and assist. I have a choice of 2 routes to get to the sailboat. They each have different risks and benefits. Principles of risk management are universal. It doesn't matter whether a Coast Guard cutter is headed offshore on a rescue mission, or you have to make a decision when you don't have enough information, or worse, too much conflicting information. Now, the way you decide to present an offer to a reluctant landowner can have a significant impact on whether you get a quick transaction or a complicated, time-consuming battle. There is a risk associated with every decision that you make, but there's a different risk if you make a different decision. What process do you use to assess risk and make critical decisions? There's 7 steps in the risk management process that I use that have helped me to make critical decisions. Step 1, identify tasks. You want to reposition your company with a plan for growth or to increase the volume of what you're currently doing. It's going to be a complicated process. You have to know where you want to go and develop your plan to get there by breaking it down into the individual tasks. Now, this is not a new concept or earth-shaking news, but it is the important first step. Step 2, identify hazards. Look for what can go wrong in terms of equipment, environment, and personnel. Equipment consists of more than your computer, your smartphone, and your satellite. Your marketing plan is part of that equipment for your business. Is it consistent with your brand and message? Does it resonate with your clients? And just like mechanical equipment periodically needs a tune-up, so does your business plan, and your clients need maintenance. Environmental hazards consist of more than any hazardous materials that might be lurking between the surface of what it is of the land you're trying to acquire. Bad weather can cause power outages that can shut down computers and damage and lose critical data. Are your backup servers on a different geographical location and power grid, so they're not subject to the same potential for fires, floods, earthquakes, hurricanes? And the business environment includes recessions, interest rate volatility, inflation, new government regulations, and the actions of your competitors. Step 3, assess personnel. Are the personnel properly trained, and do they have the right level of skill? If not, get the right people or provide the necessary training. And even if you have the A team, if they're tired or under a great deal of stress, their judgment and performance can diminish. Now, step 3, assess risk. You need to know the potential adverse consequences of each one of those hazards. Okay? This formula for risk is actually very simple. Risk equals severity times probability times exposure. Severity, what's the worst that can happen? A minor delay, an embarrassment to your company, loss of your largest client, severe injury or death. Rate down a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is negligible, 5 is catastrophic. Probability, how likely is it that this event will happen? Rate this on a scale of 1 to 5, where 1 is very unlikely, and 5 means it is quite possible that it will happen. And exposure, instead of thinking of that window of opportunity we always hear about, think of it as a window of adversity. How long is it open? Rate this on a scale of 1 to 4, where 1 is a very brief period, and 4 is for the entire time of the task. Once you have these 3 numbers, multiply them. You get a number between 1 and 100. If it's 20 or less, you have low risk. But don't let that fool you into thinking you have a guarantee of success. You rarely get a guarantee in life. If it's 50 or higher, you have high risk. You should see red warning lights flashing. You should hear Jaws music playing in the background. When I first started using this process to plan my own missions, and after the fact when I conducted accident investigations, I thought that 80 would define high risk. But the more I used the process, the more I came to realize once you approach 50, you have high risk. Step 4, identify options. Start with the tasks that have the highest risk. Can you change the task to accomplish the same goal? Or can you change something about equipment, environment, personnel to lower your overall risk? 5, evaluate risk versus benefit. Only three criteria here, very simple, all very important. Never accept an unnecessary risk. If it's not necessary, it would be foolish to accept it. Never accept an unacceptable risk. Even if the probability of something happening is very low, if you can't live with the results, you probably shouldn't be doing this. And never accept any project unless the benefit outweighs the risk. Let's face it, there's no future high-risk, low-benefit projects. Step 6, execute the plan. I've seen a lot of people conduct a good faith effort when it comes to risk management, but unfortunately they stopped here. Risk management is a continuous process. Step 7 is monitor the situation for change. In all the accident investigations I've conducted and case studies I've read, a lot of people did not monitor the situation for change. Or if they did, they didn't notice something changed. Or worse, they noticed the change and then ignored it. Have you ever seen someone put a year or two of their life into planning something, at the last minute something changes and they can't bring themselves to change the plan? I don't care how good plan A is, if the situation changes, you need plan B. How much time and effort do you put into this? That depends on how much time is available between being assigned a project and when you begin the execution phase. They'll generally fall into one of three time categories: time critical, deliberate, strategic. Time critical, you only have minutes to hours to come up with your plan, or you've been planning something for a couple of years, something changed, and you now have minutes to hours to come up with plan B. It's a very informal process because you don't have a lot of time. It'll be a verbal process. Deliberate time frame. You have days to weeks to come up with your plan, or again, plan B. More time, more formal process. Develop a written plan, you have time to review it and revise it. Strategic time frame is when you have a year or more. Most formal of the projects because you have more time to do it. Not only develop a written plan, you have time to conduct research, to come up with new equipment, procedures, training programs to help you lower your overall risk. But regardless of how much or how little time you have, if you use this process or any other one that suits your needs, it'll help you make those critical decisions. The first critical decision I had to make was, which of the two routes do I take to get to the sailboat? The short route through the Cape Cod Canal, or the long route around Cape Cod, Nantucket, and Nantucket Shoals. Well, generally, in search and rescue, you want to get there as quick as possible. So the short route through the canal would seem to be the obvious answer. But there's a problem. It's a very narrow waterway. I have a very large ship. I'm going to have almost my entire crew up all night. No one is going to get any sleep. When you begin a rescue mission, you want people who are at peak performance, not people who are tired. If I take the long route, my crew can get some sleep. But it'll take twice as long to get there. I won't arrive until midnight the next night. I'll have to deal with darkness instead of daylight, and the weather is predicted to be much worse. I decided the least risk involved a short transit through the canal. But regardless of which route I choose, the Rescue Coordination Center knows a jet can get there quicker. They send a Falcon from Coast Guard Air Station Cape Cod. Doesn't take long for the Falcon to find the Satori, but they don't hoist the people off the deck of that sailboat. Has anyone seen the James Bond movie Thunderball? Remember the end? James Bond's in a life raft waiting to recover. Jet flies overhead, yanks him out of the life raft. 0 to 400 miles an hour in 2 seconds. That would be exciting. But the Coast Guard does not employ the James Bond method of extraction. We find the boat with a jet. The people are hoisted by a helicopter. An H-3 helicopter from Cape Cod arrives and the pilot decides there's too much risk to hoist the people. It's nighttime, and that presents a risk because it's harder to see in the dark than it is in the daylight. And if you can imagine a helicopter hovering over the mast of that sailboat as it's rolling violently in the waves, when you're down that low, you can't use your instruments to maintain order. You need a visual frame of reference. This night, there's no horizon, no visual frame of reference. And for some strange reason, our pilots say they like to know which way's up and which way's down before they start pushing that little stick in the helicopter. There's another risk. They could wrap the basket around the rigging of the sailboat. When that happens, our pilots immediately cut the cable because they do not like being attached to boats, especially if they're sinking. But once you cut the cable, you're out of the rescue business. If things get worse, there's no second chance. Do you remember the scene in the movie when the helicopter wrapped the basket around the rigging of the sailboat, and a moment later it was free? Did you wonder how that happened? The pilot in the movie was smarter than our pilot. He went to the internet. He downloaded the upgrade to the software, and he installed the unwrap function. If you wrap the basket around the rigging, you hit the unwrap button, and you're back in business. It's a technique that works extremely well, but unfortunately, only in Hollywood. Our pilot has one more option. You can have the people jump off the boat into the water with the bad weather. No visual frame of reference. Nighttime. No exposure suits. It's going to take a long time to get them out of the water. And they don't have those exposure suits to protect them from the cold. The pilot knows we're on the way. He decides to hover over them and wait for us to get there. If things get worse on the nights of a severe winter storm, which is not good. I don't consider this to be a training opportunity for the new people. We send the A-team. They deliver the exposure suits to the sailboat as it slides off a wave, lands on the bow of a original inflatable boat, blows out the forward pontoon. There's nothing to protect my boat crew as they head directly into the sea. A wave comes on the boat. Boat crew standing in water that's almost waist deep. The engine stalls. The engineer restarts it. Next wave comes into the boat. Boat crew staying in water that's almost waist deep. The engine stalls. The engineer restarts it. My boat crew is well trained, high level of skill, a lot of experience. I have confidence in them. They're the A-team. But I don't want to take on the extra risk of putting 3 more people into a damaged small boat. We still have the helicopter. The situation has changed from the night before. With daylight, there's a horizon that provides a visual frame of reference for the pilot, and the people on the sailboat have the exposure suits that our small boat just delivered. So we tell them to jump off the boat and into the water. I'd like for a moment for you to imagine you're on the Satori. You're not sure you're going to live through this storm, and the Coast Guard just told you to jump in the water? Where is your level of anxiety? We don't want people to panic. We want them to remain calm. Our rescue swimmer from the helicopter swims over and says, "Hi, my name's Dave Moore. I'll be your rescue swimmer today." Well, that sounds familiar. "Hi, my name's Larry. I'll be your waiter today. What would you like to drink, sir?" And he asks who'd like to be first. One of the ladies raises her hand. He helps her into the basket. One by one, the 3 people from the sailboat are hoisted up to the helicopter. The small boat goes back to the ship's standard procedure for recovering the small boat. You position the ship so the waves are on one side, pick up the boat on the other side. The ship provides some protection from the waves. Here we have a problem. The weather is significantly worse than we put the boat in the water. Normally, it takes a long time for a lot of wind pushing on a lot of waves, great big seas, but the storm's far from normal. The weather's getting significantly worse by the hour. We are not a 32-foot sailboat. We are a 1,600-ton ship. And we are rolling terribly. Now, my concern is that after I connect the cable to the small boat, ship rolls, boat swings out. When we roll in the opposite direction, boat slams up against the hull of the ship. Someone could be hurt or killed. We head directly into the sea. This makes the ship a more stable platform, but as soon as our small boat heads directly into the sea, without the forward pontoon, wave comes in the boat crew standing in the water, almost waist deep, the engine stalls, engineer restarts it. I consider several options and decide the least risk method to recover my boat crew is to have a helicopter hoist them. The only reason to get that boat back is because we put it in the water. Boats are cheaper than people. Sometimes when you're working on a project, you have to be willing to accept a sunk cost and move on. We abandoned the small boat, waved goodbye to it. It was never seen again. In case you're wondering, that boat cost $52,288. The Secretary of the Department of Transportation, Sam Skinner, said, "Larry, don't worry about it. You're not going to have to pay for it." Pay for it? So I consider this a successful rescue. You'll recall that my wife Carol and the wives of all my crew members know we are safely anchored behind Cape Cod until the evening newspaper comes out. 6 o'clock news comes on. When I got home, I had to explain to my wife I didn't lie. The truth changed. As we listen to our is not damaged because this man was sailing with the weather and not fighting it. He is at less risk if he remains on the boat than if they try to hoist him. While David Wohl makes his decisions to leave him there, they head home. They've refueled 3 times so far this mission. They need that 4th and final refueling. But we are into the worst part of the storm. The turbulence is so violent that the helicopter cannot connect up with the fuel drogue from the tanker. They try everything, flying higher, lower, faster, slower. Nothing works. David Wohl knows he's in serious trouble. He has only enough fuel left for one of 2 options. He can attempt to refuel one more time. If they're successful, they fly home. If not, helicopters without fuel do not glide like airplanes. They take on the properties of a rock. If you drop a rock 5,000 feet, people on the rock are not going to make out so well. There's other options to ditch. Ditch is a euphemism for controlled crash. That's not a good idea either. Unfortunately, these are Dave's only 2 options. Dave decides to ditch. And what he didn't know that night, more than anyone else until that tanker returned to his home base, in all his attempts to refuel in that turbulent weather, they'd damaged the fuel drogue so badly that even if they found a clean patch of air, the tanker could not have delivered any fuel to the helicopter. If they attempted to refuel one more time, that helicopter would have fallen out of the sky. Most likely everyone on board would have been killed. Dave calls us because we're only 15 miles away. I have only 2 of my 4 engines operating. We don't need a lot of speed. We're just going back to the anchorage. You get a better riding pad weather if you go slow. And I can save some fuel. But knowing we have people going into the water, we put all 4 engines on the line. We come up to full speed and we start racing to the scene. And how long does it take the Coast Guard cutter with 4 engines traveling at full speed to travel 15 miles? This night it takes 5 hours. That's an average of 3 miles per hour. To put that into perspective, the average speed for walking is 4 miles per hour. We are going up and down waves that look as big as mountains. The rudder and the propeller keep coming out of the water. Do you remember the scene in the movie where the actor who plays me gets very upset with his helmsman because he can't steer a steady course? Mind your helm. If I were the helmsman, I would say, Captain Radicki, if you keep the rudder on the water, the ship would be a lot easier to steer. The town of IRWA was built by the United States Navy in 1943. It was designed to tow battleships. It has tremendous power. It has a diesel-electric plant. The engineers know that means a diesel engine turns a generator which produces an electrical current that goes to the main motor, which turns the shaft, and of course the propellers attached to the shaft, and I'm seeing some blank stares and eyes glazing the door. Apparently everyone in this room is not an engineer. Okay, think of it in these terms. The knee bone is connected to the leg bone, is connected to the ankle bone, is connected to the foot bone. If you want to walk, it helps to put the foot bone on the floor. If you want to move a ship, it helps to put the propeller in the water. We are racing to the scene at 3 miles per hour. Helicopter starts to descend. When it's low enough, pilot's going to have this crew jump out. I don't know about you, but I've never understood why anyone would want to jump out of an aircraft until it's night. Because this aircraft is about to crash. Quite often when an aircraft ditches, the pilot does not survive the impact with the water. He has his crew jump out first. Maybe they can live. He's low enough. He starts with his pararescue jumpers because these people jump out of aircraft for a living. The first is Rick Smith because Rick is the best pararescue jumper at the 106th Rescue Wing. I'd like for a moment for you to imagine you are Rick Smith. You're 32 years old. You're sitting at the door of the aircraft, preparing to jump. What are you thinking? Are you trying to recall the fine points you learned about jumping into extreme weather at pararescue school? Are you thinking about your wife and your upcoming 8th anniversary? Or maybe what costumes are your 3 children going to wear for Halloween? Do you say a prayer? Or do you curse the wind? Time for preparation is over. You jump. What are you feeling? Courage? Or fear? You're the best at this, and you know it. But no one has jumped into weather this extreme. The second later, you disappear from sight of the helicopter. The other pararescue jumper, John Splain, wants to time his jump. And if you can imagine the helicopter hovering as the waves are rising and falling, if you can time your jump to land on the crest of the wave, instead of landing in the trough, you fall a shorter distance. And with waves this big, that difference is significant. But John can't see the waves to time his jump. He jumps blindly. He's falling. He's falling. Then the thought occurs to him, like, I should fall a long time. This is from a man who jumps out of aircraft for a living. When John hits the water, he's traveling at 60 miles per hour. At that speed, water takes on the properties of concrete. He's knocked unconscious. When he comes to, he doesn't know where he is or why he's out there. All he knows is he's in the middle of the ocean and he's severely injured. He's broken a lot of bones, including some ribs that damaged his internal organs. He has massive internal bleeding. Pararescue jumpers are not doctors, but they get extensive medical training because they have the mission of wartime search and rescue. When you find the crew of an aircraft that's been shot down, quite often you're going to find people with injuries that are life-threatening. The good news is that IRWA obviously war. When they attempted to refuel with the tank, he flips those down. You can see the waves. He times his jump, and he jumps without incident. And that's how you're writing up a military investigation. He's jumping out of an aircraft. He's in the middle of the ocean, in the worst weather in 100 years. He jumps without incident. Flight mechanic Jimmy Oley is not wearing an exposure suit, and to this day cannot explain why, even though we're flying a mission hundreds of miles over the cold ocean water. Jim looks out the door and says, I'm not going in that water. I'm not going to jump. We call that denial. He's going in the water whether he jumps or he stays in an aircraft that's going to run out of fuel and crash. The pilot, David Vole, lands the helicopter in the water. It's a miracle he survives. And then he remembers one of the items he forgot on his emergency checklist. When you're in an emergency situation, you go down that checklist step by step because there's a very good reason for every one of those steps. But between the darkness and the turbulence, in the helicopter, they couldn't read the list. They had to do it from memory. The item he forgot is that before the aircraft ditches, the pilot is supposed to open the door to the aircraft because the impact of the water could twist the airframe, the door might not open. Dave takes his hands off the controls, reaches for the door. It takes about 100 years to get there. He grabs the latch, turns it. The door opens. He gets out. He quickly finds that the flight mechanic, Jimmy Oley, who immediately starts suffering from the effects of the cold water because he doesn't have his exposure suit. Engine pararescue jumper John Splain sees the strobe light of the pilot. He knows he should swim over there. That's what he's been trained to do. In any survival situation, you always get together with other people because you can help each other physically, and then there's the mental aspect of moral support. But John knows how badly he's injured. And there's a very good chance that before the sun rises, he'll be dead. He's with his buddies when he dies. He hurts their chance for survival. Because once that first person in the group dies, it's easier for the others to give up and die. But it's his best chance to live. Bates it back and forth in his mind. He knows it's the right thing to do. He swims over here. Can you imagine how difficult it is to swim in weather like this, even if you didn't have all those internal injuries? The pilot has, the injured pararescue jumper, the flight mechanic suffering from hypothermia. Can he keep them alive long enough to be rescued? We're racing to the scene at 3 miles per hour. That's not surprising. The first Coast Guard unit on scene is a Falcon jet. They find the Air National Guard crew. They put their landing lights on and off so they'll know they've been found. Maybe it'll give them some hope to hang on a little bit longer. And you have to understand how painful it is to try to stay alive in conditions like this. You have to have that all-important will to live. Next Coast Guard unit on scene is an H-3 helicopter from Cape Cod. Pilot Edgewood has no intention of putting his rescue swimmers in the water. He's not sure he can get anyone out. He decides, I'll just lower my basket. The Air National Guard rescues people at sea. They'll know they should swim over and climb into the basket. Now, some questions I'm frequently asked are, how bad was that weather? Was it really as bad as was described in the book or the movie, or how fast was the wind? I'll give you the best answer I can to the last one. The wind was really fast. Yesterday, I won the wind speed reader. Our anemometer registered 90 miles an hour. A while later, I won another wind speed reading. The gauge is on 0. I know it is not dead calm. Step out on the bridgeway and look up. Our anemometer had been blown off the mast. That was yesterday before the weather got really bad. When Ed DeWitt lowers his basket, the basket doesn't go down. It goes almost straight back into the tail rotor. Good thing the flight mechanic didn't put out another 5 or 6 feet of cable, or have 2 helicopters in the water. Ed DeWitt cannot rescue the Air National Guard crew, but it's not due to lack of training, skill, or experience. The weather is beyond the limits of his aircraft. So Ed does the only thing he can do. He hovers over the Air National Guard crew, waiting for us to get there, in the hope of taking the search out of search and rescue for us. We finally arrive. I see one strobe light by itself. I see 2 strobe lights together. I know these 2 people can help each other. We head for the single strobe light. Try to get alongside the man in the water, but I can't control the ship. We have enough power to tow a battleship, but not enough to overcome this weather. The average hurricane has enough power that if you could harness it and put it to productive use, you could supply the entire power requirements of the United States for 6 months. And this storm is much worse than the average hurricane. I don't want you to think I'm a control freak. When I say right to the rudder, I expect the ship to go to the right. Full speed, full rudder. 40 seconds later, the ship begins to turn. We are 1,600-ton cork bobbing in the ocean. We can't fight the weather. We have to figure out how to use it. Normally, if you want the most control over your ship in bad weather, you head directly into the sea. If you can't do that, you head directly away from it. The last thing you want to do is turn sideways, because you'll begin to roll. And if it's bad enough, you can roll over. But the only way to get to the man in the water is to use the power of the ocean. We head away from the strobe light. We turn sideways, and we let the waves push us to the man. Another question I'm asked often is, how big are those waves? And I'll give you the best answer I can. Those waves were really big. Normally, it's not difficult to estimate wave height. You stand on the bridge of your ship, you look down at the tops of the waves. After a while, you get a feel for estimating their height. Our bridge is 40 feet above the water. We're looking up to the tops of the waves. The weather buoys are recording wave heights of over 100 feet. Were they really 100 feet? I don't know, but I can tell you, they were really big. We begin to roll. 55 degrees to one side. 55 degrees to the other side. That's 110 degrees from side to side. An interesting fact, once you get past 45 degrees, it's easier to walk on the wall than it is to walk on the floor. Of course, a few seconds later, it's easier to walk on that wall until you're back up on that wall. I don't have concern for the ship because the ship has the stability to withstand this. And when I use the word stability, I don't want you to confuse it with the word stable. They sound similar, but they have very different meanings. Stability is the naval architect's term. That means when the ship rolls, there's a riding arm to bring it back. When we hear the word stable, we think of gyro stabilized, meaning it doesn't move. Remember the scene in the movie when the Coast Guard ship is approaching the men in the water? It's rolling terribly. It gets alongside the men in the water and it stopped rolling. You wonder how that happened? The captain in the movie was smarter than I was. He went to the internet. He downloaded the upgrade for the software. He installed the gyro stabilize function. You make your approach. You roll. Get alongside the men in the water. That's your gyro stabilize button. Stop rolling. People out of the water. And then you can flip the switch and go back to rolling again. Unfortunately, I didn't have that upgrade because it's only available in Hollywood. Well, I don't have a concern about the ship. I've got a great concern about my crew. Because they could be swept overboard by the waves, and I might not get them back. If I do nothing, most likely before the sun rises, the Air National Guard crew will be dead. How do you stand there and make a conscious decision to watch someone die? But if I attempt to rescue, and some of my crew members are swept overboard by the waves, as a result of my decision, some of my shipmates will be killed. There's no conservative approach. Don't do anything, people will die. attempt to rescue, even more people can die. You can't go into a situation like this hoping for the best. Hope is not a method. You have to understand what risks you are willing to accept and be satisfied you have a plan to overcome those risks. My crew is well trained, high level of skill, a lot of experience. But the key for me is they work together extremely well as a team. This gives me the confidence to go forward. Not a guarantee. You rarely get a guarantee in life. Ship rolling 55 degrees to one side, 55 degrees to the other side. Waves towering over the ship, crashing on deck. My rescue team can't even walk out to the bow. They have to practically crawl on their hands and knees to get out there. We have one man whose only job is to watch the waves and call out just before they hit, so the rescue team can get behind something, hold on to something. If they're hit with full force of the wave, they're going overboard. They move again until the man calls the next wave. We're alongside the man in the water. How do you get him out? I don't care what your director of IT tells you, technology is not the answer to everything. The way you get a man out of the water is with manual labor, and I am not putting in rescue swimmers in the water because I'm not sure I can get anyone out. We use the cargo net that you saw in the movie, but the weather's so bad the man can't climb up the net. Our rescue team takes a cargo net and snags the man in it as if he's a fish, hauls out on deck. Graham was short of co-pilot. He had an interesting perspective on his own rescue. Graham said, when I was on the crest of the wave and the ship was down in the trough, I felt like I was standing on a mountain, looking down into the valley at the ship. The man in the water is not supposed to look down at the ship, he's supposed to look up to the ship. We make our approach to the two strobe lights. We get close and I realize it's 3 people, not 2. The flight mechanic, Jimmy Oley, doesn't have his exposure, so he doesn't have a strobe light or any of his survival equipment. Our rescue team snags the 3 men in the net. With the ship rolling, the waves crashing. Wait, the 3 men's too much. 2 of them fall out of the net. 1 remains in the net. They haul it up on deck. It's John Spline, the injured power rescuer. The pilot, David Hole. The flight mechanic, Jimmy Oley, are swept aft. Jim has been in the water for more than 6 hours without an exposure suit. He is suffering from severe hypothermia. He's drifting in and out of consciousness. He's hallucinating. They get to the stern just as it comes out of the water. Jim wants something to hold on to, so he grabs onto a rudder. Can't use the rudder while he's holding it. That's less than a foot from our propeller, which is 13 feet in diameter. Can't use that either. Seeing that Eric Pope is at the stern yelling, let go, let go. Jim finally has something to hang on to. He's not going to let go. Well, the next wave resolves the matter for us. As it moves on, he takes Jim with it. Dave turns to him and says, Jim, you don't often get a second chance in life. If you're anywhere near that net again, you hold on to it as if your life depends on it, because it does. We make another approach. Ship is rolling, waves are crashing. My rescue team is cold, tired, and wet. They have been at this for almost 2 hours, and half that time they've spent underwater, even though they've been on deck. They want to give up, everyone understand. But this team is acting with the power of a single focus. There are no hidden agendas. There are no competing priorities. Every member of the team is wind-driven course. Standard operating procedure is for the first Coast Guard aircraft on scene to drop a data marker buoy into the water. It drifts with the currents and transmits an electronic signal so that the Rescue Coordination Center can use the real drift data to plan the next search. But on a night like this, you expect Murphy to be out there and for his law to be in full effect. Data marker buoy stops transmitting. Don't worry, we have a backup system. We use computer-assisted search planning. You enter the weather data into the computer, and the computer will estimate the wind-driven currents for you. We have another problem. No one put weather this bad into the computer. If you don't put it in the computer, you can't get it out. We spend most of our time searching the vicinity of the data marker buoy because it's the most likely position of the man drifting with currents, and we can call out its position several times a day so that the Rescue Coordination Center can use the real drift data to plan the next search. We're searching. We're searching. It's been 84 hours since we first began. My crew is tired. No one has gotten any decent sleep between the violent motion of the ship and all the activity of the rescue mission. Tired people make mistakes. A mistake can cost someone their life. It's time for us to go home. This is not what my crew wants to hear. They want to rescue Rick Smith. Sometimes when you're in a leadership position, you have to do what you know is right deep in your heart, even though you know it's extremely unpopular with everyone. I call the Rescue Coordination Center in Boston and tell them to send another ship out to take my place as the on-scene commander. And something you have to understand, it's not important that we rescue Rick Smith. It's important that Rick Smith be rescued, and there are many more members of the rescue team than just our ship. As we head back in, that data marker buoy had drifted from 75 miles south of Long Island, New York, to almost the coast of Virginia, and that's in the opposite direction of the Gulf Stream. Search continues, 10 aircraft in the sky. Will not continuously, almost continuously go back in for more fuel pressure crews. They're searching. They're searching. They're searching. It's day 8. No sign of Rick Smith. Normally the Coast Guard doesn't search this long, but Rick Smith is a pararescue jumper. He is one of the best. He has the equipment, the training, the skill, the experience, and that all-important will to live to get home to his wife and 3 children. If anyone can survive, he can. There are going to be times when you're going to have to make a decision that you know is right, and you just don't want to make it. Coast Guard Rescue Coordination Center calls off the search. Rick Smith lived by the pararescue jumper's credo. This we do so that others may live. Unfortunately, he lost his life in service of his country. Rick Smith is a hero. But it's not because of how he died. It's because of how he lived his life in service of others. And that's something every one of us has an opportunity to do. Live our lives in service of others. The other pararescue jumper, John's plane, had injuries so severe he was in the hospital for 6 months. Rick jumped out at a greater height than John. At the time, we wanted to believe he was alive and we were going to find him. In hindsight, we think he probably did not survive the impact with the water. The book is reasonably accurate. The author, Sebastian Younger, is not a commercial fisherman. He's not a sailor. He doesn't rescue people at sea, and he wasn't out in the perfect storm. But I think he did as good a job as anybody can using an interview process to put the story together. The movie, on the other hand, takes certain liberties, like Hollywood always does. The director, Wolfgang Peterson, said, "This is not a documentary. It is based on a true story." We heard the movie was coming out, and my wife started joking with all of her friends. Carol said, "By the time Hollywood's done with this, you won't recognize Larry because he'll be a 20-year-old female." As it turns out, the actor who plays me is 6'4". Now Carol says, when I got home, I was soaking wet, so she threw me in the dryer and I shrank. The movie is a good depiction of the life of a commercial fisherman. It's given the Coast Guard tremendous exposure, and it's great entertainment. I know the gentlemen are not going to care, but ladies, this is the hand that shook the hand of George Clooney. The final question I'm asking most often is, why didn't we rescue the people on the fishing boat, the Andrea Gale? There's no call for help from the Andrea Gale, and if there had been, the Canadian Coast Guard would have responded, not the U.S. Coast Guard, because they were somewhere between Newfoundland and Nova Scotia, about 700 miles for us. Let's see, at 3 miles per hour. These rescues took place in weather that's almost beyond imagination. They were successful because everyone was where he needed to be, doing what he needed to do, when he needed to do it. That's the power of a team acting with a single focus. But before I close, I'd like you to think about what you've just heard. But I want you to think of it as just another scary Halloween story, because it isn't. It's about people like you who found themselves in a situation they couldn't control. They assessed the risk. They made difficult decisions when they didn't like their options, and they worked extremely well as a team. Now, what challenges are you facing? Well, it doesn't happen very often, and it's viewed very negatively when it does. Sometimes you have to exercise the right of eminent domain. And some of your relocation agents go out to those rural areas. They can end up facing the business end of a shotgun even though they're trying to present a fair offer. And the infrastructure in the United States is in serious need of upgrade. But that transportation bill that you've been waiting for a long time isn't coming anytime soon. And just like the perfect storm, all three have come together in the same place at the same time. This has not produced the worst business climate for right-of-way professionals in the last 100 years, but it does deserve your attention because you can never eliminate risk, but you can manage it. This will not guarantee success, but it can give you the confidence to go forward with the decisions in the most difficult circumstances. When your annual education conference is over, you go back home, you return to work, and jump back into your job with new ideas on how to chart your course to be able to acquire the land that you need. I wish you success, and may you jump without incident.
We have a couple mics, so we have a little bit of time for you. No, we already talked about shaking John.